Hello, YouTube. Welcome to my new deep dive analysis series. Of course, we did one last season on the winter major teams, but today we're restarting up the series, and now the first thing we're going to look at is Karmine Corp. Karmine Corp, who just won the recent Open qualifier in an amazing fashion. Anybody who watched the EU regional, we just got to see Karmine Corp sweep Endpoint, reverse sweep BDS, and then take out Gentlemates in, I believe, what was the most viewed EU regional of all time. I think I saw some stats that said the viewership was just like couple tens of thousands under the World Championship last season, or something around there. So amazing stuff, great regional. I got to watch it. I got to watch it live, not in person, but I got to watch it live. But that's what we're going to do today. So if you don't know what we're going to do for the deep dive analysis, we're going to take Karmine Corp. And thank you to Silk for the follow. We're going to be looking at Karmine Corp. We're going to be looking at the individual weaknesses, strengths and weaknesses. And we're also going to be looking at the team strengths and weaknesses as a whole after qualifier 1. As with the last deep dive analysis, I'll be actually making a big overall spreadsheet that we can use throughout the season, so we can see notes, improvements, things that have maybe fallen off for certain teams as the season progresses. So, of course, Karmine Corp, they got Vatira. That part hasn't changed. Rise has joined them. And the Tau. I know Forz is in chat. A Tau is I don't know if it's his favorite player, but one of his favorite players, right? So yeah, so strength, and now we can just copy and paste that for all the players. So and then the team strengths and weaknesses. There we go. So now, without further ado, let's start. So we do want to start with a group stage match. So anybody in chat, if you have a preference, we can look at one group stage match. So we got which was a sweep. Team of Mike Boy Tho and Tekaz. A lot of people are saying Tekaz is one of Europe's next up players. I believe he has made main events before. Might be wrong though. I know he's made a close call. Yeah, he's made close calls as a team. All right, but the first main event, maybe by what it looks like. Maybe he made it on another team, but not too sure. Easily top 3 for me. Do 100%. All right, 100%. Breezy, Triton, and Crispy. So this 100% roster had just come off of beating Team Vitality in the first round of Swiss, and then they took Karmine Corp to Game 5. So that's actually going to be a really great series. So try to find replays for this. Here we go, replay files. Then let's get started. So Swiss stage, round 2 uppers, I believe. Oh, it doesn't even say uppers or lowers. So Karmine Corp versus 100%. The first thing we're going to look at really is the stats. Of course, now anybody who maybe isn't really familiar with stats aren't normally the best thing to determine strengths or weaknesses in a team. They're like, you can't tell glaringly what a problem is in a team structure or in individuals through stats alone. But you can at least get an idea of what to look for when watching you're watching a replay when you look at the stats first. But here we go. Let's look at this. So demos inflicted. We got Rise. Okay, so Karmine Corp's demos, positive demo ratio for Rise, so that's good. A Tau is actually negative, which is actually weird. Looking at Team Liquid, I know Tau normally had positive demo ratio, and Vatira is neutral. So that's honestly really solid from Karmine Corp. I mean, this is a match that they end up almost getting reverse swept in, so we'll have to see why that ends. And looking at the movement ground stat, normally we're looking between 50 and 60. If it's below 50, that normally means that they're pre-jumping too much, or if it's above 60, it normally means they're hesitating too much. It's kind of just a rough number, but this is normally the number we'd like to see for the top pro teams. But without further ado, let's get started. Let's look at one of game 3 or game 4. What weaknesses in Karmine Corp do we see? That's what we're going to look at. Of course, we can notice their strengths too. Their 3-2 score lines. But let's see. So they're about to win here. So game 3. We'll look at that one. All right, let's see. Who do we want to start with? You know what? Just for you fours, let's start with the toe. Let's see the Tao. Let's see how he does going into this. So right off the bat, the big thing that we're going to be looking for, so individual-wise, there's going to be two things that we're going to be mainly looking at when it comes down to high-level play. So when it comes down to the individual, we're going to be looking for two things. One, possession. How well does the player take possession? At the end of the day, what do you need in order to score goals? You need the ball at the end of the day. Right? So that's going to be the big overall reason you need the ball in order to score. So cut out the middleman. Instead of giving it to the other team, just try and get it back. Try and do whatever you can to maintain team possession. So that can be losing a 50, can be passing to a teammate, it can be just holding on to the ball yourself, it could be beating a player, knowing that you get to the ball first. So that's all ways that we can maintain possession. And the other idea is the difference between reading the play versus reacting to the play. That's going to be the big difference we see in some pros. Big thing we want to be looking at is if pros are reading the play. What is reading the play? Reading the play is your ability to know exactly what's happening before the ball is ever hit. And there are some pros, if we remember back to the old deep dive analysis, we saw pros like Ahmad who actually reacted to most things. And it was a big reason why he got caught off guard, was sometimes out of position. And Atoe was actually one of those players last season who had issues with reading the play, and it led to him throwing himself at balls he wasn't going to get to, threw him out of position, and overall didn't allow him to be the best player he could possibly be. But when you're reading the play, some of the best players we saw was TRK. Weirdly enough, Ahmad worst at reading the play. TRK one of the better ones at reading the play, where he looks at the cars on the field, their speed, their momentum, their angle of approach, their elevation, that he looks at all those things, and he's able to at least get a good idea of what is exactly going to happen before it ever happens. And this is something that's built up through experience. You want to play solo Q2s, you want to play ones. Learn how to look at your opponent's car and tell exactly what he's going to do based on what his car is currently doing. That's going to be the big thing we're going to be looking at for how good the pros are that way. And team-wise, we're going to be looking to make sure they cover the three main areas of the field. Sure somebody's always on the ball, make sure someone's always supporting, and making sure somebody's applying off-ball pressure. A lot of people understand the first two, but off-ball pressure is necessary mainly due to the idea where off-ball pressure comes down to we don't want to give the other team space. If we have no off-ball pressure, that means our third man instantly rotates back a majority of the time. And if they instantly rotate back, that means we're giving almost 2/3 of the field, or a good chunk of the field, to the other team for free, which is something that we don't want, especially at the highest level. Teams are fighting for pressure, fighting for possession, so we need that third man to be doing off-ball pressure, trying to give his teammates as much time and space as possible so we can apply consistent pressure to the other team. And from talking and watching with the Tao, he definitely leans towards reacting. But who knows? Maybe Farah's teammates are teaching him to read better. Could be, could be. And Marty, welcome to the stream as well. And Silk also sent a message. Goat. No, Goat Silk. But without further ado, let's get into this game. So right off the bat, what position is a Tao? We're seeing he's support for Rise. You can see he's mainly focusing on boost since he's right here. You can tell that the way Rise is 50ing it, that he's going to be winning that 50-50. So right off the bat, we're seeing Tao's a little slow to turning up the field, but it's perfectly fine. Rise is going to win the 50 anyway. So now it's more so looking at what's he going to do next. And we can see just by how Atao turns after the ball's being hit. So Atao, it definitely looks like he still reacts to the play. That is one thing we're noticing in Atao's play. Is look, he's turning after he faces the play. But what people don't realize is even if Atao is reacting to the play, he's still putting himself in the right position from a team standpoint. Because the reason why a good team rotation has the players in position based on what's happening no matter what. So it looks like Fatira is rushing back. We'll look at him in a second. But when it comes to Atao right here, we see that he's forcing himself to face the play, close behind facing forward. We can see he's grabbing pads. He's at least putting him in the right position, even if he doesn't have the best read on what's currently exactly happening. So this is why Atao is still such a great player. He's still in position, And even if he does react, just because he's in position, it requires the least amount of individual effort. Whereas imagine if a Tau was really far away here, right? Let's say Rise gets a 50 or the opponent hits the ball here. In order for a Tau to do his job and get this ball, try to relieve pressure for his team, since he's so far away now, individually he's going to be expected to do a lot more. But by forcing himself to be close behind facing forward, by forcing him to be closer to that position, we see that he's actually giving himself the best individual chance to be closer to the ball, react to the play, and do what his job is. And he has a lot of experience, so he should be able to do his job from this position no matter what happens. So this is why it's good here for a Tau. So what are some strengths and weaknesses we can put down for a Tau? Well, strength-wise, he puts himself in the correct position based on where his teammates are. So his read of teammates is really good, but his weakness is he reacts to the play, which means he is not always in the best position or gets caught off guard. Right? So there we go. That's going to be one strength and one weakness for a Tau. And of course, at the end of the stream, we'll rewrite the notes to make sure they're a lot more legible for people. But all right, that's pretty good. But the one person we do want to look at right now is Vatira. He also did a small jump that made him slower to react. Exactly. When you jump unnecessarily, that's also going to make it, because the entire time you're in the air, that means that you have limited your chances. When you're on the ground, you have all the chances in the world, but as soon as you're in the air, you've now committed to something until you can land or recover, right? So that's a good call out by Fours in the chat. But let's see what happens with Vatira. So we can see right here with Vatira, he is now in front of the ball. So when it comes down to Rocket League, we want to be seeing somebody on the ball, which we see Rise here. We want to see someone filling in support, and we want to see this off-ball pressure. Now, off-ball pressure, of course, the immediate thing most people think of is demos, right? Well, there's no one currently to demo on the side of 100%. So I would like to see here, Rise still has possession, so I'd love to see Vatira go for a boost steal here, assuming that boost is still there. Rotate through, because now there should be a support player coming in to support Triton at some point. We can see 100%, they don't have any support for Triton. If that ball gets hit past both these players, then it's going to be a very difficult situation for them to handle. So what we want to see from Vatira is, as he's rotating through, try to rotate down the pads. As Crispy rotates across, go for a demo on him. Maybe if, I think this is Breezy. If Breezy rotates back like this to try and support Triton, Crispy's far away. Then, of course, we want to see Vatira demo him. Overall, trying to create some space for his teammates to take. That's what we want to see here from Karmine Corp. So as we can see right here, Vatira kind of just rushes back. But let's look at it from Vatira's point of view. Maybe there's something that... So he doesn't go for the boost. It's more instantly rushing back. So this is a weakness in Karmine Corp's deals here, where the third man rushes back. But it might just be a Vatira thing. So that's something that we'll mark down for Vatira right now as a weakness. Rushes back as third / off ball pressure. Okay. So we'll write that down for Vatira just for now, just to see if it is just a Vatira thing or if it's a team. But the one thing we do notice right here is a Tau. You lose the 50. Vatira is supporting, now he's taking possession. So one thing that Karmine Corp's strength that we can put down is Karmine Corp, as a team, all the players try their best to ensure someone is always on the ball and someone is always supporting. That's one thing that we're looking right now from Karmine Corp. One thing that, even if they don't have off-ball pressure, they at least understand the necessities of ball guy and support guy. Because right here, Vatira, he may not be doing his job as off-ball pressure, and we can see Rise, he doesn't really do the best job as a ball guy here, but he does pass it back to a teammate after his 50-50. But right here, what would the ideal Karmine Corp be in this situation? So right here, we see Vatira lose the 50 back to Rise. So that would be perfectly fine. So what we would want to see from Karmine Corp here is we want to see Vatira rotating through, applying off-ball pressure. We want to see Rise reading the play so he can get to this ball first and get possession. And we want to see a Tau supporting Rise close behind facing forward here as soon as possible. And that way it's kind of like a cycle where Vatira will look through for demos and rotate out. Rise will take possession until he eventually loses it to a Tau, and a Tau will support so he can get possession next, right? And then if Vatira is already rotated out, then of course Rise will look for demos. A Tau will take possession, Vatira will support. Or if Vatira is still looking for demos, then Rise will actually fill in behind a Tau. This is the ideal Karmine Corp rotation we want here. So compared to what's ideal, let's see from an outside perspective, what does it look like? So Rise does go, but it looks like Rise individually, he wins the 50 here. And normally most people, when they look at the game, they're like, okay, well, Rise won the 50, so that's a good thing. Not in this situation. I'm sure most of you guys already know from the beginning, we talk about one individual point we want to work on, possession, right? We have to see how well players take possession. We can see right here, when Rise is first man, he wins the 50, but in winning the 50, it ends up going straight to the other team. So this is a giveaway of possession. And against a better team, more than likely, this is going to start a very quick counterattack for the other team due to this giveaway of possession. But Rise also doesn't have support right here. But exactly, Forrest said it well in chat. Crispy is very thankful to Rise for the pass, and now it's going to be up to Crispy to see how he executes now. But normally Rise here, he'd want to try to either pass it more behind him mid, or hope that his teammates actually support it, because here Rise may mess up, but what does Rise not have? He doesn't have support, right? So this is not just on Rise. It's a whole team dynamic from Karmine Corp. We see Vatira, he didn't even go grab a boost steal. Vatira just landed and is instantly rushing back. We can see a Tau, he's not supporting Rise here, and Rise as the possession man didn't really do anything for his team. This as a unit for Karmine Corp, all three of them messed up. That's what leads to the giveaway pressure. So the question now becomes, then why didn't we score? Well, of course, just because Karmine Corp have to do all this stuff, it means the other team does too. You can see possession right here. Crispy just passes up to Triton, but Rise has a really good read on this. So Rise may have lost the 50, but look at the individual skill of Rise here. He reads exactly where Crispy's hitting it. So that way, right when he passes up to Triton, Rise intercepts. And this is a very important idea in Rocket League, where you only want to pass if you're being pressured. If we look at Crispy here, we want to be seeing him try to maintain possession as best he can here. One, he jumps really early, as you can see here. Right, one, he jumps really early for the play. He might be worried about Vatira. Maybe that's why he jumps early. But he's not really being pressured that much. So if he goes for a pass, it has to be a perfect pass for speed. But as we can see, he ends up hitting it right in the vicinity of Rise. So even though Rise gave it right to Crispy, Crispy gave it right back to Karmine Corp. And we can see, look at Rise's POV here. This is a great instance from Rise. He may have won the 50. It actually looks like he was trying to lose it, but he wasn't able to succeed doing so. But then he reads where Crispy's hitting it, then he hits it across and puts the ball to open space. This is perfect. But yeah, he passed the Triton, but he panicked. But look at this right here from Rise. So what's the strength we can put down for Rise? His ability to read the play. Reads the play very well. That's what you have to put. He reads the play really well and can pre-position, and sometimes pre-jump his opposition due to his knowledge of what will happen. And this is the difference between a Tau and Rise in the situation, right? Looking at the situation, we can see that a Tau, he puts himself in the right position based on where his teammates are, but he reacts to the play. If we put a Tau in this very same situation as Rise, more than likely, it's going to still be a possession for 100%. Because right here, Rise, he sees that Crispy's hitting it up the wall. He knows where his teammates are. And then he goes up the wall to where Crispy's going to hit it, and then he beats Triton to the ball. You're not able to do this if you don't know 100% where that ball is going to be hit. So this is perfect play from Rise, but he's spent enough play on this for now. Let's see what Karmine Corp does. We'll stick over on Rise. So we see Rise. He's third man for his team. We see Vatira is that first man, Atao is that support role. But we can see that Karmine Corp they eventually get into the positioning we want to be. Because right here, Vatira loses the 50-50. Now we see, what do we see? Well, we see a Tau going up for the ball, so he's first man. Rise will now position himself to support a Tau. And the Vatira, now that he's in front of the ball, we want to be seeing that off-ball pressure again, right? But Rise, he has so much momentum going into the midfield here. Like, he's kind of wasted a lot of boost, but he still keeps it up. Like, even though he used a lot of boost to get supersonic here, notice that he's still collecting pads. And then even after the 50-50 here, he goes to support a Tau. So this is actually really solid from Rise. We can see his read of the play is very solid. So he goes mid to give Vatira more so an option to switch the play, so to speak. Exactly, Forrest says it in chat. Trying to keep the he goes to where there's open space initially. So this is an individual decision. From a pure structure standpoint, we normally want the team to follow the same flow. But Rise is going against the flow just because there's open space here. But it's not that he's going to commit. He knows that Atau is still a support player for Vatira. But if Vatira ever thinks he can switch the play to open space, then Rise will take possession, Atau will fill in behind him, and Vatira will do his job as third man. Right? So it's more so he goes to open space, but right when he reads that Vatira is losing the 50, Atau is going to be that first man, instantly fills in support for Atau in the best way possible. So it looks like Rise has a very good understanding of where to be as where the open space is, right? So we can put down another strength for Rise. Rise has a great put down another point here for Rise. And great at recognizing where there is space for individual opportunities. While still ensuring he can fill his role in rotation. So this is really solid from Rise. Rise honestly is looking like one of the stronger players in Europe right now. Of course, after that World Championship Grand Final, a lot of people might question Rise. Made so many Grand Finals and just not been able to succeed in a majority of them. But we can see that he really is a solid player. Maybe now he's back with Vatira, he feels a lot more comfortable. One thing now I want to look at, so we're gotten a few strengths and weaknesses, but one part we haven't looked at is Vatira. So we'll skip over to Vatira, see how well he does. So Vatira, he's not rushing back here, so that's good. He's watching the middle. Then he goes to fill in support behind Atau. This is a really good adaptive rotation from Vatira, because technically he is third man right here, right? But we can see Atau's winning the 50. Or, sorry, he's not winning the 50. He's going to lose the 50 here. And then Rise is going to follow up. But the way Rise approaches it, he hits the ball to the corner, but isn't able to follow up. So we'll see that Atau ends up being the one on the ball. And Vatira, instead of waiting for Rise to recover, for speed, he cuts to fill in second to ensure ball guy, support guy, and the third man are all filled in as quickly as possible. Let's re-look at this play here from Vatira. You can see Rise hits it, but Rise lands inside the net. So Atau's going to be first man, and Vatira fills in second man. And look, Vatira, he initially goes mid, try and support his teammate, but look at this right here. Vatira's not going to commit. He goes behind initially for support, but when he knows the midfield's open, he wants to play Atau's pass. But then right here, he sees Atau's not going to pass it, so instead he's trying to play a beat on this 50-50, and then right before the 50 happens, you can see he notices that it's going to be a lost 50-50. He doesn't read the play as fast as he could here. But right here, he plays the beat, but then right when he notices it, like, look, he's already noticed that Atau's losing this 50-50 here. So in his mind, what he's thinking is, okay, well, Atau will be third man. The ball will get lost back to Rise. And so in Vatira's mind, he has to fill in second. So look at this from Karmine Corp. They have a great understanding of making sure to fill in the 3 necessary areas of the pitch in Rocket League, and Vatira especially, he does have a good idea of reading the play. So he's not as good at Rise at reading the play. So I don't know if I can put it down as a strength for Vatira when it comes to reading the play, but I guess we could put does read the play well enough to get into position slightly ahead of time. So we can put that. And honestly, I think we do have to continue the rush back as third man, but we now have an option to look at Atau, right? We saw Vatira as third man. Now Atau's going to be third man. What does he do? So right here, he goes for a boost steal. So he is applying off-ball pressure. And the ball gets hit across, so he's going to fill in first man. So it does look like the third man role being an issue is more of a Vatira thing than a Karmine Corp. But we can see, again, we see a Tau. He's having some issues with supporting from very far away. He still makes sure, so he's facing the play. He's behind his teammates, but a majority of the time he's far away. And normally this is a pattern we see in players that tend to react to them. Because imagine you guys where you're a lower ranked twos player, right? Imagine you're playing twos, you're supporting your teammate, but you react to the play. So what's the main thing you're worried about? You're worried about that ball getting hit over your head. So normally players who keep reacting to the play, they tend to keep themselves supporting further back. So that goes against the very nature of support. If you're a mile away from your teammate, are you actually supporting him? No, you are not. And I've actually watched twos replays of Atau and Vatira play together. Vatira supports very well, but Atau, he tends to support really far away. And it looks like Force is actually in our chat has talked to Atau before, so he has a message here. So doing a great job of collecting pads, being third man too, going into support. When I talked with Atau, he always said how important off-ball pressure is. It's something he thinks about a lot. So that's really good from Atau. So we can see, at least from an Atau standpoint, we can put a strength for him. He understands the importance of off-ball pressure and tries to do whatever he can to be useful even when off the ball. Perfect. So that's great from Atau. But we can see that another weakness that we do have to put, even though he understands where to go in position, when he supports, he finds himself really far away from the play. And this leads to Karmine Corp losing pressure. And the reason why I'm putting this down as an Atau weakness is when we look at Rise and Vatira, they are supporting properly. Like, if we look at Rise in this situation, Rise, he gets the boost steal, but then right here, look, Vatira's first man, and is Rise just rushing back? No, he's staying close. He's trying to play Vatira's force. Now, Vatira actually hits the ball, but since Rise is close, still able to fill in his position and at least do a decent job. He does leave it for Atau here, but he can see that he's keeping himself in position very, very well. So let's analyze. Okay, so Vatira, he reads the play well enough to get into position slightly ahead of time. And weaknesses, he rushes back as third man / off ball pressure. This leads to the other team having more time to think and individually execute, which can lead to a loss of pressure for Karmine Corp. But one strength we do have to put for Vatira, Rise, and Atau, mechanically, they are one of the best in the world. So that's something we do have to, like, people don't think about it, but there are certain pros that mechanics aren't necessarily the strongest too, or they're not as good as other pros. So mechanically, one of the best in the so that's something we do have to put in. We'll put it in for all three players for Karmine Corp. As one of their. But we can see right here, Rise. He's supporting close. We've seen multiple times now where when Atau is the support role, like where Rise is right now, Atau is a lot further back. And that's only going to cause issues. The further away you are as support, because you have to think about it like this. It's not just your team playing. It's team versus team, right? So right here, we can see that Breezy's a first man and Atau is a first man. Atau is playing a force here for Rise. So whoever gets this ball next depends on who supports better, Rise or Triton. And we can see that Rise is supporting close behind facing forward. He's supporting the play close behind it, right? We can see Triton, he's not facing the play. He's actually going away from it, so he's not going to be close. And definitely not facing forward. So in terms of support, he's neither facing forward, behind, or close. And whereas Rise, you can check off all three boxes. Maybe be a little bit closer, but this is why Rise is going to get to this ball first. And since Atau forces the ball really well here, it's even better. It's a two-man job trying to get this ball from the other team, but it only works if our support man's actually supporting close, because otherwise it's all on a Tau to get this ball himself, or if Rise lets Reezy continue this air dribble, then Rise individually now has to execute to get that ball on his own, which requires a lot more individual effort. And you can imagine if you put 3 best players mechanically in the world in position, they can do a lot more with that position than somebody else. But if these best mechanical players in the world don't put themselves in the right position, they're going to find themselves having to use their mechanics to more recover for their bad positioning than to use them to outplay the other team. That's why it's still so important for 3 mechanical players to learn how to rotate so that they can maximize their strengths rather than use their mechanics to minimize their rotational weaknesses. So that's going to be one thing. But see what happens with Vatira. So as we can see, again, Vatira supporting close. So we can see that it's more a weakness from a Tau in support than it is a strength for the other 2 players. See, a Tau tries to take possession. Now let's see what happens here. Then we can see a Tau rotates far away from the play, but here it's fine. Our team has ceded possession. We can see that 100% are booming the ball. And we can look at this from Rise. He's probably going to demo Breezy. Exactly. Look at that. He's going to demo Breezy. So this is a really good instance of Karmine Corp ensuring that all 3 positions are filled in. So I think that's one thing we're going to have to put down as a strength for Karmine Corp. Karmine Corp, they always ensure these 2 things. And it looks like their structure is solid. And it allows the players to know where they need to go at all times. However, I will put a weakness when Karmine Corp's 3rd man finds themselves behind the play, they look a little lost. Meaning the structure in the rotation can be a lot more solid. Can be better. So Karmine Corp, they're still not the best rotating team in the world, but compared to last season, it looks like the players are a lot less lost. But we can see that strength-wise, they always have someone on the ball and someone supporting, so they understand that. But they have some issues with 3rd man sometimes. And then Vatira specifically has the biggest issue with 3rd man where he ends up rushing back. But look at this here from Rise. We can see a good example of off-ball pressure. Right here, he goes for a bump on Triton. Right here, this is something that will help you guys in your 3s game. So if we look at this, in Rise's mind, we got 2 players back. So in Rise's mind, since we have 2 players back, okay, a Tau is technically not in position. But based on but if we read the play, we can tell Crispy's booming this ball, right? So by the time Vatira fills in 1st man, a Tau will be supporting very well for Karmine Corp. So in Rise's mind, he has 2 teammates back already, which means now it's his job off the ball to do as much as he can to be to his teammate. Try to help them relieve pressure now that the other team has possession. And if we look at Rise, this is exactly what he does. Instead of rotating down the front post, he goes for a demo on Breezy. Does end up getting demoed himself, but he is trying to rotate towards the middle. One of those things where he ends up rushing back. Maybe he wasn't going for a demo, looking at it from his POV. Looking from a Tau's POV, I thought it was Rise who got the demo. That's bad eyesight on me. But we can see right here, he's at least going towards the middle, which is good. And maybe on his screen, because we do have to remember, this is an RLCS admin replay. So it very well could be that Rise on his screen actually was going for in this situation. We can see he was turning towards Breezy. So I'm going to give Rise benefit of the doubt. He was going for a demo here by what it looks like. But he ends up getting demoed himself. But still a good idea. He was rotating down the middle, not trying to rotate down the front post. So that's very solid. But we can see as well, from a Tau and Rise, they try to keep the flow of the rotation. But we do see a mistake here from a Tau. Let's see what he does here. So he does try and take possession, but he ends up giving it to the other team. This is actually a really good read from Triton, and great support from the other team. This is where we can commend the other team. Look at this there. Crispy supporting, Triton trying to lose a 50 back. This is actually really solid from 100%. Their fundamentals on offense looked really solid in this. But one thing we can notice, what happened from Karmine Corp? Well, Atau, he ends up not being able to maintain possession. So that's going to be an issue here from Atau. He wasn't able to maintain possession perfectly. This does look like a one-time. And then we're going to see Rise is technically supposed to be supporting. So it looks like Rise, he may have hesitated a little bit, right? So he sees Atau's hit, but then he doesn't look at his opponents when reading them. He didn't look at his opponent when reading them. So we're going to keep an eye on Rise here for a little bit to see, maybe he's good at reading the play in most situations, but maybe he sometimes isn't aware of where his teammates are. But this is an amazing kickoff. Look at this here from Karmine Corp. Rise wins the kickoff, and then Vatira instantly reads it. That's a perfect kickoff from Karmine Corp. So maybe that's honestly we can put a strength down for Karmine Corp. We'll mark that as a strength. What can we put? Variety in their kickoff strategy. Probably the best team at kickoffs last season, actually Power. Team Power from OCE. Torsas has been on, honestly, any team Torsas has been on in the last few seasons, he's honestly been, has honestly been one of the better kickoff teams in the last few seasons. Something that OCE finally has over another region is kickoffs, but other regions are starting to get a lot better at kickoffs. So we can see right here, Rise, he ends up going for a demo. Now, what I don't like is he's kind of throwing himself out of position, and this ends up being why 100% should be gaining pressure here. Because right now, we can see in this situation, Rise cut from second to third. And this is a big issue when it comes down to Karmine Corp's structure and rotation. Rise individually decides to cut from second to third to look for a demo. But as we can see, Atau is expecting himself to have a support role. But since Rise isn't here, Vatira now has to individually step up, try and keep pressure. But from a team standpoint, Rise in this situation ends up being the reason why Karmine Corp should have lost possession. You're probably wondering, why didn't Karmine Corp lose possession? Because Vatira individually stepped up massively here for Karmine Corp. Look, Vatira gets a great read on it, and he takes possession and he keeps pressure. Now we're hoping that Vatira has a support role here. Now we can see Rise, he does end up rushing out afterwards. So it does look like maybe the structure of Karmine Corp isn't as clean as we thought. So I'm going to remove their structure is good. It allows players to be where they need to be most of the time. So one thing we do, so that is something that we have noticed with a couple players, right? So sometimes the players make decisions that end up losing pressure for Karmine Corp due to a lack of understanding of a structure that would maximize pressure. So as we can see, Karmine Corp, they're still filling in the jobs really well. Like, they have a ball guy, they have a support guy. But as we can see, there are a lot of situations where they end up kind of putting themselves in a bad spot, or they end up losing pressure. So why is Karmine Corp the best team in the world still? Well, they're the one, or at least one of the best teams. They're one of the best teams because even if they find themselves in a bad structure or bad rotations, individually they're normally still able to execute. And I would have no doubt when we look at a BDS versus Karmine Corp match, I would have no doubt in my mind that the reason why they were losing those first 3 games is because individually they weren't executing as well as they normally do. And we saw these rotations really show through. And then once they started individually playing with a lot more confidence, maybe that's what ends up leading to them being able to complete that reverse sweep. Rise, he ends up forcing here. But he recognizes that a demo here isn't really going to do much. The Rise, he's really good at recognizing where he can be useful. But look at this right here from Rise. If we look back, we can see that Vatira isn't supporting Atau here. So this is why Rise ends up turning to fill in second. And now look at what we have here. Now we have Atau off ball, Rise cut from third to second, This one here, this one's a good rotation. This is a great analysis of the game from Rise's perspective. He loses the 50 back to a Tau so a Tau can get possession. But since Vatira is still a mile away from the play, instead of looking for more demos and staying mid, Rise cuts to fill in second to make sure that the structure is held. So this is something that we do have to put down as a strength for Rise. He has a great recognition. As great recognition of where his teammates are on the field. So even if team's structure is not filled, actually about the structure, because we said Rise mess up the structure. So if someone is not supporting ball guy, instantly fills in that role. So that is something that's really solid from Rise. As we already know that the structure from Karmine Corp does have its issues, where if it was fully mastered, if the structure was fully perfected for Karmine Corp, we just wouldn't see those issues. It's the type of idea where if a player has mastered something, it doesn't matter how nervous they are. If they've mastered something, they're never going to mess it up. Like, ever. But if they haven't completely mastered something, then depending on how nervous the player is, that's where we either see more weaknesses or less weaknesses. If the player's more nervous, the stuff they haven't mastered is probably going to be more prevalent. But if a player is not nervous, stuff that they haven't mastered, we're not going to be seeing that stuff as much since they're playing with a lot more confidence. So right here, this is amazing from Rise. He recognized that Vatira was a mile back. So now, since Rise was able to cut and fill in second, now we have all three jobs filled in. We have a Tau looking for off-ball pressure, Rise on the ball, and Vatira supporting close behind facing. So this one adaptive rotation from Rise is what allows Karmine Corp to where if they individually execute, should allow them to keep pressure here. See if that ends up being what happens. So Rise, now it's going to be back over to Vatira. They managed to regain possession instantly. So Rise, just by filling in that first man role, it forces Crispy out. But look, see that Tau is giving Vatira an option upfield. And we can see Rise, even after he forces in this one situation, he instantly goes back to support behind Vatira. Again, ensuring we always have someone on the ball, someone supporting, and someone applying off pressure. So I am going to have to put a weakness from Rise. It is partly due to structure, but we're seeing Rise has this issue more than most. So sometimes he ends up cutting off his teammates from supporting the way they want, and it slows down rotation. It's not the worst thing in the world. I mean, that's the only weakness we have for Rise. But it's not the worst thing in the world, but there's still a decent amount of issues that we can see from just that alone. And we can see another instance here with, we have to solidify at this point not Rise, the Tau. At this point, he has issues with second. That's probably the biggest issue with the Tau. When it comes down to supporting, he ends up being a mile away from the play. But how did Karmine Corp score here? You have to look at it. Well, Tau has possession. Let's look at this play here. So, we can see Vatira. He's playing, probably wondering, well, isn't Vatira in front of the ball? Well, Vatira is actually playing a beat from a Tau here. This is another way you can support your teammate. So your teammate can, of course, lose a 50. They can directly pass it to a teammate, or they can beat a player, and a support person can come in. And Vatira is one of the best players in the world at playing a beat from a teammate. If a Tau beats Triton here, so the ball just barely gets hit past Triton, it's a free ball for Vatira. So right here, we actually see a great instance of Vatira filling in support for Rise in this. So Tau, of course, is ball guy. Rise was support, and Vatira was off-ball pressure. But Vatira finds himself being able to fill in support in a really good spot here. So that way, a Tau can now, after he beats Vatira, can now rotate through looking for demos. Vatira can take possession off the beat, and Rise, instead of supporting a Tau, is going to fill in support for Vatira. Let's see if that's what happens here. Looks like that is what happens, and since Rise is supporting, he's able to get a great goal. So it looks like I misread what Atao was doing a little bit, but I'm not a player at the end of the day. So I'm not the best at reading the play myself, but as you can see, close enough to the right picture. Right? We can see Atao, he plays the 50, so that way Vatira feels a lot more safe to go for a clean beat. And Rise, he's not worried that he's last man back. In his mind, if I support properly, we're going to get a goal, or we're at least going to be able to avoid getting scored. Rise supports close behind facing forward here pretty much perfectly. So that way, Vatira wins the 50 perfectly. And then Rise supports close. That's how they end up getting the goal. Look at that. Just perfect from Karmine Corp. But here we go. Karmine Corp, again, looking very solid. But I think we've now gotten a good picture of the strengths and weaknesses of Karmine Corp. So we're going to let this game play out a little bit more. We can see that it looks like when players are on low boost for Karmine Corp, they don't understand the as much importance of just keeping the ball close when they're on low boost. And this is something we didn't just see from Rise right now. It looks like maybe it may have been a mechanical mistake from Rise in this, but he is on low boost. So about staying behind the ball. He could have stayed behind the ball, at minimum tried to get a 50-50. And it looks like another reason we got scored in here may have been due to Atao's support weakness. We can see again, Atao a mile away from the play. And then he wasn't able to read the play well here either. Because anybody in the world who, like here, you should be able to tell way ahead of time, Crispy is hitting this ball mid. If you look at the way that Crispy is on that part of the ball, no matter what he does, that ball is going to be coming out more centralized. So Atao should have already positioned himself to be facing the play here already. So that way, right when that ball hits, he can go straight into that ball with full momentum. And that's how Atao avoids getting scored on here. So there's two issues for Karmine Corp. One, Rise gives away possession, but two, support from Atao. Again, he's a mile away from the play. See, he reacts to the play as well, and that's what allows Breezy beat him to the ball. Look at this play from Breezy's point of view. So he doesn't know Atao is there, but in Breezy's mind, he's instantly behind the ball right here. So he sees the ball hit, but he knows exactly where his teammate's hitting. And look, he's full speed at this moment, holding down his boost, going for that ball as instant as possible. And he started doing that before the ball was even hit. He knew that right here he plays further back, but right when he reads that Raz hitting that ball out, he instantly goes mid and reads that his teammate's hitting it. You can see he boosts at the same time Crispy hits that ball, and then he goes for it and he plays 50-50 since he expected a player to already be back. So since Breezy was already in position and Atao reacted and wasn't already in position, that's what allows 100% to get this tying goal right here. So as we can see, there are weaknesses in Karmine Corp's gameplay just due to pure structure and foundation, and just an understanding of individuals. So right here, I think we do have to put as a team weakness when players are on low boost and on defense, that the players do not understand the importance of keeping the ball close and maintaining possession. This leads easy giveaways, pressure to the other team. That's something we do have to look at from a Karmine Corp perspective. But it looks like we do got a good amount of notes, so let's review so far. So strengths of Vatira. He does read the play well enough to get in position ahead of time. Mechanically, he's one of the best players in the world. And honestly, we should look at Vatira a little bit more. That's one player we haven't looked at much through play. But normally that's a good thing. If we haven't noticed much from Vatira, that means he's doing a lot for his team that maybe we're. So weaknesses, he rushes back as third man. This leads the other team having more time to think and execute, which can lead to a loss. Then strengths for Rise. He reads the play really well and can pre-position and pre-jump his opposition due to his knowledge of what will happen. Overall, it increases, it allows him to be faster to the play. Overall, allows him to be faster to the play than both teammates and opposition. Perfect. He's also great at recognizing where there is space for an individual opportunity while ensuring he can still fill his role in the rotation. So I'm going to put this to good since we have seen some issues with it. He's still good at it, but there are still some issues. Mechanically is one of the best in the world. Great recognition of where his teammates are on the field, and he tries to fill in. But weakness-wise, he sometimes ends up cutting off his teammates from supporting the way they want, ends up slowing down the team rotation, and then the other issues he has are team. And we can see here, Atao, strengths, he puts himself in a correct position based on what teammates are, understanding the importance of off-ball pressure, tries to do whatever he can. Well, again, one of the best in the world, right? Weakness-wise, he reacts to the play, and even though he knows what position he's in, he's not really putting himself in the best place to fill that position. And strength-wise, Karmine Corp is a team. They try their best to ensure there's always someone on the ball and support. Their structure is very good. Karmine Corp have an emphasis in support and supporting floor pressure as a whole. Good from Karmine. But we can see team-wise there are a lot of weaknesses. But at the end of the day, when you got players like Vatira, Rise, and Atao, you're gonna have so many strengths that there are team weaknesses. As long as they play with confidence, they're gonna fulfill a lot of roles. But we can see on paper here, Karmine Corp do have a decent amount of issues. And if Karmine Corp have a decent amount of issues, you can imagine how many issues other teams. But we will watch Vatira for the last little bit, and then we'll switch over to a more nerve-wracking match. Where, as we saw from the previous deep dive analysis, as players get more nervous, they don't make new mistakes. They're still making the exact same mistakes, but they're making them more often. For example, if we looked at one of the games where Karmine Corp won in this series, we'd probably see the same weaknesses and strengths, but we'd probably see the weaknesses be happening a lot more prevalent. Sip, when I was watching Vatira's PV in the finals of this region, I noticed Vatira nervously taps his boost as well. I know this isn't finals that you're revealing. Well, we can look at, if that is a bad habit he has, we should be able to notice it right here. But sometimes a lot of players, they feather their boost to keep momentum. So that's something that also could be the case. He could be feathering his boost for momentum again. Actually, we can see that right here. He actually feathers his boost for momentum as he's turning. Okay, so he grabs the boost, but as he's turning, he feathers the boost, but he's instantly going over a pad. So he stays topped up on boost, but as he's turning, he's able to keep momentum. Look, he feathers the boost right there as well, but it's over a mini pad, so he stays at 100. So this is actually a really solid strength. So Vatira, great call out there from Sith, but as we can see, maybe it wasn't a weakness from Vatira. This is actually a strength for Vatira. Vatira, great at maintaining individual momentum while conserving boost, and also great at pathing over mini pads to stay topped up on boost. Perfect stuff there from Boost. All right. We are about to see a goal. Oh, and it's Atao getting beat again. Everyone talked about Atao joining Karmine Corp. It's going to be an amazing team. Don't get me wrong. His mechanics are great. But look at this. Again, we see another situation where Atao, as the support role, is the reason why, or one of the biggest reasons why, we get scored on here. Look at Atao, because Atao, look, he's a mile away from supporting his teammates, and then he just tries to go. He just tries to... It's kind of the idea where in Atao's mind where, like, maybe the other team doesn't expect me to go, so I'm just going to go. But this kind of mindset doesn't really work at the pro level anymore. And the reason why is your opponents aren't bots. Your opponents are trying to read what you're doing and are trying to know what you're doing as best as they can, right? So looking at Triton here, if Triton's easily beating Atao to the ball. So if Atao recognizes that Triton's beating him to the ball, Atao can still jump, but he has to read what Triton's doing. Right here, Atao's just playing ball. But since Triton's closer to the ball, and he's reading that Atao's beating him, or that he's going to beat Atao's challenge is useless. If Atao is already close behind facing forward Vatira here, then maybe he could have beaten Triton with this ball. So from a positional standpoint, so supporting close, that's one way Atao could have fixed this. But since he's reacting to the play here, he's not reading it. That's what allows Triton to beat here. And this is the second goal of this game where it's been off of Atao's support. If Atao is supporting close the entire time, or even if he was out of position, if he just reads that Triton's beating him to the ball, or just knows that the ball's reads that he's getting beat to the ball, he would end up instead playing the hit from hit from Triton, and then instead take free possession right here. So there's two things that Atal could have done better. One, from an individual standpoint, reading the play instead of reacting to it. But two, just being in position already. He could actually still react to this play. But if he was, like, look, he's a mile away from the play. Imagine if he was grabbing pads right down the middle on his rotation back. He'd be right here. And right when that ball gets hit out, if he was actually grabbing pads and reading the play, he would be right here. And it's a free possession, maybe a free pass, and maybe if Rise reads it as well, which he's been reading the play well all game, this is an empty net. So this goes for if Atal was just at minimum in position, but best case scenario was in position and reading the play, it's a scoring opportunity for Karmine Corp. But since Atal didn't read the play and he wasn't in a good position, this is what leads to Karmine Corp getting scored on. Great from Triton for being able to make that goal happen too. But EU is more than just bots. Like EU, we can like the big. Like, I've always noticed this big thing with Europe. When it comes to Europe, their structure and rotations aren't as clean as North America, but they're great at reading the play for the most part. They're great at keeping speed, cutting for speed. Everything's for speed and pressure in Europe, right? So that's why, even if the rotations aren't clean, they got the mechanics, they got the speed, and they got the experience, and the mentality as well. Don't forget about mentality, to be able to still execute and do their job. But why did Karmine Corp lose this right here? Well, their weaknesses ended up compounding against them. Because sometimes it's a matter of just timing a lot of the time. But looks like we got a lot of strengths and weaknesses for Karmine Corp. I'll fix up and clean up the notes afterwards. This will be posted to YouTube afterwards with the link to the notes. So if you guys want the notes for yourself, I'm going to be making a big spreadsheet for this series where I'm going to be posting all the strengths, weaknesses, and everything of all the players for all the qualifiers we look at, all the majors we look at, worlds, everything like that. I'll be making a big grand spreadsheet for the end of this. So make sure you guys follow my YouTube. It's I think the is at the party at Herobrine, so don't judge the name. But I am just HVC Luke on YouTube, so you can search it up there too. And where all the stuff will be posted along with my old series of deep dive analysis. Welcome S5 Cosmic. How you doing, homie? Welcome to the team. I'll be doing kilos, one push up, and cosmic squat and push up at the end. But for right now, let's look at the next match we want to look at. So honestly, endpoint, it's going to be kind of like one of those things where it's just like kind of Kira and like we can look the matches here. They weren't close. We're going to be seeing a very confident here. So the big thing we want to look at is maybe look very quickly at one match from BDS's. From when BDS were winning, and then probably Game 6. And then Grand Finals will probably be the same stuff, but at this point, we're... Now, do you think G2 and Gen G will be able to keep up and still have that good NA structure? Well, I did make a tweet about it yesterday or the day before. The difference between EU and North America. So, kind of like a side tangent while we're loading up the next here. Where... A side tangent. A tangent's already a side. But when it comes down to NA versus E, NA they do got a better structure for the most. And honestly, if you look at the best players in the world, like if you looked at say Vitality versus G2, if they were both playing with confidence in a grand final, honestly it could go either way for the most part. Like playstyles aren't that different. G2 versus Gen G will be whoever peaks. Yeah, so pretty much. But elimination stage. Versus BD. If G2 play with confidence, I'd honestly put them above Karmine Corp and Vitality if they're playing with confidence. But that's the big issue with North American mentality. A lot of North American players, they start worrying about their individual execution rather than doing what's best for the team. This is something that Europe has always been really good at, and it's why Europe ends up having so many upsets a lot of the time too, because this is a cultural thing where when we look at Europe, when it comes down to they do what's best for the team. Whereas in North America, players get worry so much about their individual execution that they end up hesitating, and it hurts their team. Whereas EU, they don't care if they mess up individually. If they mess up individually, they're going to instantly move on and make sure they won't mess up next time. But what this allows them to do is ensuring that they try to do their team job as best they can at all times. This is why European teams always look so scary no matter who they're playing against. So if it's EU versus EU, we see two teams playing with confidence, and that's why the gameplay looks so fun to look at. But if North American teams, we see players that are individually really good, but since they're worrying so much about that execution, they end up slowing down. And if you slow down, they're not applying as much pressure. That's why Europe looks so much better than North America. But if we compare Europe and NA when they're playing with confidence, when they're both playing at their best, there's an argument for either side being better. If anything, if you want to look at the teams on paper, maybe North America, if you look at G2 at minimum, if you look at G2 on paper, individually, they got pretty much everybody. And then rotationally, they used to be one of the best teams in the world rotationally. So if you look at that on paper, North America should probably win. But if you look at those nerves, Beast Mode and Daniel have had issues with nerves on LAN. Atomic, of course, he's lost worlds against BDS due to those types of nerves, right? So when it comes down to it, who would win in a World Grand Final? I'd still give the edge to Karmine Corp. At the end of the day, they're the ones who we've seen, even under pressure, they still stick to their job. But who knows? Maybe G2, maybe with Sathu under them, over them, they'll be able to continue to make sure their mentality is overall solid. And but looking at demos, positive demos here, and negative for Atao. So it looks like Atao's not good at avoiding them. He's still getting demos, bad at avoiding them. That's something. Blue Key owns you. Calm down. But here we go. Let's look at a 3-2 win from BDS real quick. But luckily, now that we've done the analysis at this point, we got the notes. Now it's more so about seeing how much more prevalent do they get. Now it's more so we're looking at a battle of confidence. That's kind of what we're looking at now for Karmine Corp, of which team is able to play their game and able to play with more confidence better. We haven't looked at BDS yet. They might be a fun team to look at in the future. But looking at Karmine Corp, they individually they have a lot of strengths. Team-wise, they have a good amount of strengths, but there's also a decent amount of weaknesses in their gameplay. So normally, what allows a team to win? So it kind of looks like this. A confident team, normally we see their strengths kind of get boosted. If a team's confident, their strengths that they already have get boosted. And if they're confident, their weaknesses, they kind of are diminished if they're confident. But if a team is nervous, normally we see their strengths go down and we see their weaknesses go up. At the end of the day, though, if a team has already mastered something, so fully mastered something, a team could have the worst day of their lives, but if you've mastered something, it doesn't matter if they're confident or not. If a team has mastered something, they're going to be doing the things they've mastered no matter what. So it's more so of a question, now that we know the strengths and weaknesses of Karmine Corp as individuals and teams, now so it's more so about seeing how good are they at being able to execute their own, how are they able to hold their nerve at the end. And that's why European teams are so hard to play against when you get them to land. They play with so much confidence, but it's also why it's kind of hard to predict how well European teams will do on land. Probably the best example of this is when we did the deep dive analysis last season. When I look at last season, if we go to the Winter Major, I'm sure you guys might be able to guess, but the team that blew expectations was actually G1. On paper, we learned that G1 last season, the only team worse than G1 on paper last season was Karmine Gladiators. This is the worst. Karmine Gladiators on paper were the worst team, and then G1, we gave them their own category. It was everybody else, and then G1, and then Gladiators. But if we look at the group stage, we see that G1 went to Game 5 against G2, FaZe, and Crew. All on paper, all three of these teams, so the three best teams did make it through at the end of the day, but it was by the smallest of margins. On paper, FaZe, G2, and Crew are better than G1. On paper. But we can see that G1 are even able to win against FaZe, we're able to go to Game 5 against G2, and Game 5 against Crew. Why were they able to do this? And that's just because of how EU play. They play their game. It's just that since G1 had so many team weaknesses, had so many individual and team weaknesses that even though they are playing with confidence, they're able to win some games against maybe an unconfident G2 or FaZe and Crew. But once Crew got confident, once G2 were playing their game, and FaZe, it looks like FaZe also more so tossed in the mentality department too. But at the end of the day, the better team was still able to win even without that confidence. But imagine if G1 just, as a team, knew how to execute, or individually the players are slightly better. If that was the case, maybe we see a group here where G1's number one. We very well could have seen that last season if G1 were just slightly better individually or slightly better. But this is why it's so important to look at Karmine Corp to be like, okay, well, how confident are they? Well, this is a game 3 right here. Whoever loses this game, if Karmine Corp lose this game, then they have to reverse sweep, which of course, spoiler alert, Karmine Corp do end up reverse sweeping. So this is the final game before they start reverse sweep. We can see right off the bat, we're seeing the same weaknesses that we saw beforehand. Let's look at Atao again. Atao, he's applied level pressure, now he has to fill in second. But look, he's on low boost, but since he's reacting to the play, look, if Atao was reading where Vatira is gonna and Monkey Moon were gonna fit to this ball, he would have turned on a dime right here. This is something that the best support players in the world do. They would see Vatira's 50ing it. Instead of rotating out, they would already be facing the play where the ball's going to be hit. And then it's honestly maybe a scoring opportunity for Atao. But the same weakness we saw against 100% of support role, not being close behind facing forward, and then of course reacting the play as well. This what leads to a giveaway of possession and pressure to BDS. Now let's continue to watch Atao here. And then he also reacts to Exotic's hit. Look, he keeps turning after the ball's being hit. If you look at Rise or Vatira, they almost always turn to the face where the ball's going before the ball's being. That's the difference between reading the play and reacting to the play. Atao reacts, everybody else reads. This is what makes Atao the main issue a majority of the time when it comes down to defense especially. But if you give Atao the ball, he's amazing. Right? So it's kind of like you got Atao who has a ton of mechanics, ton of speed, who's really good at demos as well, but you kind of have those weaknesses of very bad at supporting, and it leads to giveaways of pressure, leads to giveaways of possession sometimes, and sometimes even leads to just a straight up goal since he's not. That's going to be it. Let's continue here. Atao. And Atao right here as well. I don't get this. He knows that BDS are supporting quickly, or he should know, right? So this comes down to another ability to read the play situation, right? Like Atao, we know he's a smart player when he has information, but his ability to gather information, that reading the play ability, since that is not good, he's not able to use his smarts as best as he probably could. So here he turns, but anybody in the world would know that BDS is supporting very close. And in fact, we can actually see them on Atao's camera point of view. But since he doesn't notice that, he just turns, and then, well, empty net for Monkey Moon. So, again, the defensive issues right now are being caused by Atao. That is something that we are noticing from Atao. So that's where people are probably wondering, well, Atao's already pro. How can Atao get better? Well, when he's solo queuing twos, he should force himself, no matter what, to be supporting his teammate, close behind, right? Or read if his teammates are passing, read if his teammates are going to go for a beat, something along those lines. Just force himself to be in the play. And if he could do that, since he's forcing himself to be close, if he doesn't want to get scored on, if he doesn't want that ball to get hit over his head, then that will force him to get better at reading the play, because he has to look at his opponents to know where the ball is going to get hit to, try to intercept it. But we're going to let this play keep going. But now at this point, we're going to let the replays more so keep playing while we keep talking. So anybody in chat, if you guys do have questions or things you want to point out, that I can read out answer for the stream and the YouTube video at the end of this once I get it edited down, then feel free to ask. Right now, looks like Karmine Corp, there's a reason why they're such a good team, and BDS in the situation, they have their own weaknesses. Like for me, when I look at EU teams, I see big issues a lot of the time in structure. There's just a certain beauty when it comes down to teams that are able to fully rotate properly. The best team at rotating for EU the last couple of seasons has been BDS, as a matter of fact. Even when BDS were doing poorly, the best team rotationally has always been that BDS one. Because that BDS team, because they've always been able to ensure all three jobs are filled in. They apply the most consistent pressure. This has been happening since RLCS X. This season, maybe it's changed. They do got Drawley and Exotic now, so maybe we see some issues in regards to their rotation nowadays. Maybe that's why they end up losing this reverse sweep. But of course, we're looking at Karmine Corp now. But yeah, E's always had it kind of like, they're very fun to watch because they're always playing for that pressure, playing for confidence. But then if you're looking at their weaknesses, it can kind of be frustrating sometimes. You'll be like, why did a Tau not support properly? Why did Vatira not look for a demo? So from a coach's standpoint, it can be a little annoying sometimes to watch certain EU teams. But at the end of the day, when you're a viewer, there's so much pressure, there's so much speed, there's so many goals that it's just gonna be fun to watch. There's no, like, I have no question in my mind why there's so much more viewers for Europe right now, even without the content creators though. And it looks like I missed this. Thank you to Baba Kanoosh for the follow. There we go. But look at this here, great recognition. I mean, like, Karmine Corp, they're not playing bad here by any means. It just looks like right now the weaknesses of Karmine Corp, it looks like BDS are playing with so much confidence and are playing so solidly that we're actually seeing the weaknesses of Karmine Corp be brought out, unlike when we were watching against 100%. 100% they individually read the play well, and they were able to execute for those two games. But look at BDS. We can see that they're, just by being in position, they're being so much faster to the ball than Karmine Corp are. But on top of that, not only are they being fast to the ball, individually they're executing, they're reading the play really well, and we're starting to see the weaknesses in Karmine Corp really come out. But Karmine Corp, they got a great mental, and BDS, it looks like they may not. But I wouldn't be surprised if by split 2, if this BDS roster sticks and keeps grinding, I wouldn't be surprised to see them be the best team in Europe after a little bit of time. I mean, Monkey Moon, he's been the best before. Drawley, mechanically, individually, very amazing player. And Exotic, he kind of is like an Atau to me, where he still has some issues when it comes to reading the play, but he has so much more experience than Atau at being a consistent winner from being on Karmine Corp last season. I'd actually put Exotic, for what he does for his team, slightly better. I'd still put Atau as a better player than Exotic, but for what he does for the team, strength-wise and weakness-wise, I think Exotic is going to be slightly above for me. You could tell the longer they played during the day, the better they cleaned up their mistakes. Yeah, definitely. But at the end of the day, if they have a weakness, it's going to keep showing up until they grind it and fix it. We do see a good tying goal here. We'll watch it one more time. Rise takes possession, and then he goes for a bump, but a great support from Vatira. And again, we're seeing Karmine Corp, when Vatira and Rise are on the ball, they always have someone on the ball, always have someone supporting. So they're always doing a great job when it comes down to that mark. So how good are Karmine Corp? They're very good. But they have a lot of weaknesses. So if Karmine Corp want to make sure they have the best chance at winning Worlds, like right here, these weaknesses that we're seeing right here, or Vatira, he's been knocked out before Grand Finals of World 2 seasons in a row. And knowing his personality, that's going to be in the back of his mind. So, like, this is stuff where, like, in the regular season, Karmine Corp should be trying to figure out what their weaknesses are and try to iron them out as best they can. They got the individual skill to be making majors no matter what, winning majors, everything like that. But right now, we got to see them fix those weaknesses, because what's going to happen in that World's Grand Final is what's going to happen to what happened to Rise last season. What's going to happen to G2 2 seasons ago. What's going to happen to NR... What's going to happen to... What's a previous one? Completely blanking. Yeah. Or G2 even back in season 7. Like what happened to them after they got scored on at 0 seconds by Scrub Kill and Team Vitality. Like, if we don't see them master these weaknesses, what's going to end up happening is they're going to show up in the most nerve-wracking time. And as we can see here, a Karmine Corp playing against a BDS who are playing properly. All it takes is one confident team, and Vatira is going to be knocked out of Worlds again. So if Vatira wants to win Worlds, he's got to make sure that he and his team minimize these weaknesses and solidify their structure as soon as possible. Because if they don't do that, we might yet again see another Worlds where Vatira gets knocked out in a top 8 or a top 4. As somebody who watches a lot of these players on KC, they never really played closer into the peak. They're more closer to their floor to their peak the whole tournament. I think that makes it scary since they have so much more to improve on. They already won. Yeah, in terms of a ceiling, they got a really high ceiling, but you would be seeing them closer to their ceiling a lot more often if they could fix these weaknesses. We can see another issue here with Rise, so kind of repeating the issue before with Rise, where he's kind of cutting to fill in support. Like, the reason why we want a Tau to fill in support is due to a momentum. And that's, I think we can add on finally more for sure. Karmine Corp don't understand the idea of team flow as importantly as, like, we can see with BDS the majority of the time, they have a big issue. In fact, it looks like they're all rotating down the front post right now. But we can see here with Karmine Corp, I'm fine with Rise turning in and being a blindside pass option. But the reason we want a Tau to support is because he's following the flow of his team. You can kind of think like this. Imagine the defense of BDS is like a wall, right? If you want to puncture through that wall, you want to be putting as much pressure behind a single point as possible. When you're trying to apply pressure to both sides of the wall, you're probably just going to push the wall back, if anything, or the wall's just going to, or you're not going to push them at all. But that's why we have a team flow. Kind of the analogy is so that we want to try to puncture through the defense. By a Tau supporting Vatira from the same flow, the same momentum, there's a lot more opportunities for us to keep our speed and be able to apply pressure to the other team. But with Rise cutting across like this, it kind of slows down the team as a whole. And we're not able to puncture through the defense as easy. Now, of course, Rise can offer an option to switch the play for an empty net. That's perfectly fine. But it's the fact that Rise cuts a Tau off here to be support facing this direction. But think of it like this. Let's go to a more aerial point of view. Think of it like this. If we have a player coming from this direction, a player from this direction, that ball is more than likely still going to end up in the corner since the opponents are also going to try to force this ball. It's almost as if we have more players pushing the ball away from the net than towards the net. But imagine it like this, where Vatira goes and a Tau supporting like this. Now it's more even because the opponents are still going to try to apply pressure going this way, but now we got more pressure from the offense going this way. But since Rise cuts across, we're putting more people pushing the ball away from the net rather than towards the net, and a majority of the time, that's just going to result in the Karmine Corp not getting a goal. Now, of course, if Vatira is able to get this ball mid to Rise and it's an empty net or one person in net, that's just a good individual opportunity. But from a pure structure and rotation standpoint, Rise messing up the flow here is only going to hurt Karmine Corp long. So I just wanted to point that out, so that is something that we didn't talk about as much in that first replay. Let's see. Rise, he ends up filling in support behind Vatira. That's good. He tries to pass it up to Vatira. That's also... Tries to support there. But we can see that the issue, like, right now it's kind of like a battle of who's gonna keep playing their game well. And if we continue to skip this play, it is a long replay. We do want to get to the next one. If we look, we can look at the saves right here. Like right here, Rise forces, goes to a Tau. Rise fills in second. He ends up forcing, and then Exotic reads the play really well. Then we go back to the other end. Now it's Rise in a 1v1. He's able to save out, and then able to make another here. Keep possession, but we can see BDS are applying more consistent pressure due to them being in position. They always have a first man and a second man no matter what. They're not breaking rotation to come up with some individual idea to score. They're keeping it consistent. Then we can skip forward to the goal, what ends up eventually happening. You hear Rise, he's going to fill in second, eventually. Right here, he's going to fill in support behind Atao. Atao ends up leaving. Again, we see an issue with Atao, and here we see, again, a low boost touch. Something that we've seen from Karmine Corp on low boost to give away possession a lot of the time. It's something that we see not just from Rise. Here it was a mechanical mistake, but the fact that it's happening so consistently, that's what makes it a weakness. If it only happened one time in one game, it happens. Teams make errors sometimes. But it's the fact that this is happening over multiple series, over multiple games. That's what shows weaknesses in a team. Like, if it's happened multiple times a game, it's going to happen throughout an entire tournament. And the end getting scored on. Charlie makes a lead, passes it down. Atao doesn't read the play properly. Like what Vatira was hoping for here. I think he was hoping for Atao to kind of cut and fill in first here, maybe. But they both misread the play. No one challenges it being a goal. But it all started back here. Atao's not watching mid. Now Vatira, he ends up not committing. So if Vatira forced here, Atao could have read that support, but since Vatira didn't jump, it's honestly one of the first few mistakes we see from Vatira. Not doing, like, individually hesitating instead of doing his job and just going. But overall, Karmine Corp, very solid team. And just for the essence of time, probably going to skip on watching the grand finals, honestly. We're going to be seeing the same stuff in the grand finals. But if anyone wants to, but we're going to look at Game 6. Corp versus BS is the game they won. They're on the comeback trail. Watch for Vatira. Go. Vatira's going to do his best to maintain possession here. See right here, this is something this is something you don't really see in NA. EU players, they go for beats, but the reason why EU players are more comfortable going for beats is because there's almost always a support player for EU players. We can see that Ryan, like right here, he goes for the beat. You might think, oh, Vatira just gave away possession. But since that support player from Karmine Corp comes in so quickly, they read that Vatira is going to get the beat. They're actually going to beat the opponents to this ball, even though Vatira hit it in the direction of the opponent. Something that we're noticing that's really solid from a lot of EU. Look at this. Vatira wins the ball. And look, Rise gets up to it and 50s the ball. Even though Vatira hit it to BDS, Rise is there for the support. Vatira gets the ball upfield since he sees Rise upfield. So I like the idea, but it was just to give away a possession. That is a little bit of a misunderstanding on possession again from Karmine Corp. But look at this again, fast support. This is honestly the first time we've really seen Atao support close here. So maybe now that Atao's playing with a lot more confidence, even though we know that support is one of his weaknesses, now that he's more confident, maybe he's putting himself closer to the ball now that he's a bit more confident. So it's kind of minimizing that weakness that Atao that we know he has. That ball puts the ball into the corner. It's going to be over to Rise. Rise pushes forward. For a bump, now up to Rise. Off-ball pressure here from Vatira. For a demo, not able to get there. But look at this here from BDS. But BDS, BDS's structure, honestly, will still look solid, but individually the players are looking a lot more hesitant. But I was seeing a lot of players complain about Drawley. In reality, Drawley, when he's in position, he's doing a lot of the stuff he was doing in the games that they were winning. So honestly, I know this is the Karmine Corp deep dive now, but I am a bit more confused why people are blaming Drawley for everything. It's a team game at the end of the day. Like, of course, I was emphasizing that Atao is the biggest reason for why Karmine Corp gets scored on, but he's doing other stuff to help Karmine Corp win. And if we look at Drawley, he had that passing play at the end of last game and that 5-minute overtime. We see that he's forcing really well, and honestly, it looks more so like a BDS structure problem. BDS tend to have issues where they're flowing towards their own net. It's honestly the reason why NRG used to lose last season. Or or 2 seasons ago. Remember the whole BDS versus NRG? When we looked at BDS, they almost always had somebody facing the play, supporting, applying off-ball pressure the entire time. Whereas the reason why NRG weren't a good team, individually, there were 3 of the best players in the world on one team. But NRG, the way they rotated, they would always funnel the ball towards their own net. And if the other, so essentially, at most times in the game against NRG, you'd have a team, all 6 players in the field will be facing the NRG net for the most. So BDS, who at the time had a really great flow going and had all 3 jobs filling in, they were able to maximize that weakness for NRG, their own usefulness. Whereas BDS, now they're kind of rotating similarly to NRG a lot of the time, where they're almost all of them are funneling down the front post. So all the players on BDS for the most part are facing their own net. So that's a flow issue. They still have somebody on the ball, someone supporting, and someone applying off-ball pressure majority of the time for BDS. But due to this flow issue, other teams that are individually capable are going to be able to use this flow to their advantage and apply consistent pressure to BDS. So that's just a little note that we can talk about from BDS. I think one coach, I think his name was Clown Switch, I think he made a video talking about that, the whole, I forget his name for it, but reverse rotation, front post rotation, it's a great way, it's a good way at maximizing individual ability to challenge from a blind side, but it hurts the momentum of the team. It hurts the flow of the team. And that's why we can see BDS, they're not as strong as they used to be. And that's the reason why NRG were nowhere near as strong as they. Team of flow, keeping the flow pointed in the right direction is vitally important to a winning team. Not just because of pressure, but it makes it easier on the individual. I think while doesn't reverse rotation making it easier on the first man, it does. First man, so the way, at least when I was watching Clown Sandwich's video, it makes the first man's role very easy for the most part. It makes the first man be able to challenge blind side, which makes it harder for the opponents to read. But it makes it harder on the team as a whole to, one, maintain pressure. It makes it harder for the support man to keep momentum. The reason why in Rocket League we want to make sure that we're maintaining momentum is, imagine this. Imagine we have a soccer player, a hockey player, and a Rocket League. If we have momentum in direction, and let's say this is the forward direction, a soccer player's sphere of influence isn't going to be that much bigger in the direction in front. Soccer player's speed isn't really as much of a factor. Everyone is close enough to the same speed. There are some situations where there is a momentum factor, but it's very. Whereas if we look at hockey, in the direction of momentum, hockey players are able to cover a lot more of the ice in the direction of their sphere of influence bigger. Same thing with Rocket League players. Without boost, their sphere of influence is still big because they can power slide to keep momentum. But when it comes down to Rocket League players, if you have momentum in the forward direction, your sphere of influence is massive. And that's why, yes, when they're rotating down the front post, or I forget the exact name for Clown Sandwiches, he described them. But the whole point, when rotating down the same side of the field as the ball, trying to do these blindside cuts, it hurts the flow of the team. And that slows down the team, which minimizes the sphere of influences of the players on a team. When we're all going the same direction, we're maximizing momentum, which maximizes flow. But when we all end up going down the front post, we end up slowing down the players who are behind us, which minimizes their individual spheres of influence. That's what we're kind of seeing with BDS right now. It's what we see with NRG in the past. NRG were the 3 best players in the world on one team, but the way they rotated, they end up funneling the ball towards their own net, which means their spheres of influence were very, very small. The reason why it didn't matter in the past is because they were the 3 best players in the world on one team. Like, think about this from NRG. NRG were one of the worst teams in the world at rotating for a good amount of time. Even when they were winning, they were one of the worst teams in the world at rotating. But the players were so good that even though they actually made it harder on themselves, they were still winning. That's how much ahead of the curve NRG were mechanically. NRG were so ahead of the curve mechanically that even though their rotations were so bad that they actually hurt the team and minimized individual usefulness, they were still so individually good that even though they minimized their own usefulness to the team, they were still winning for so long. Like that, I hope that puts things in perspective of why NRG were so good. It wasn't a team thing. They were individually just that good. And maybe in the future at some point we can kind of do a look back, where we can look back at NRG, what happened to them. But that's pretty much the long story. I'm sorry about going on tangents, but it overall describes why Karmine Corp are being such a good team now. They have a flow. They do have someone on the ball, someone supporting. But, of course, they do have some individual and team weaknesses that aren't helping the team out as much. This was almost an play here from a town. He gets the reset and almost instantly met. Here we go. But I think that's going to be it. I think we understand Karmine Corp at a deeper level now. I'll fix up all the notes and everything off stream, and I'll probably post them later on Twitter tonight or something. At HVC Luke on Twitter. Be sure to follow. But thank you to YouTube for coming in to watch the stream, watch the video. Thank you to everybody in the chat who's joined in on conversation for it, especially Fours. You're messaging a lot as well. Thank you, Fours, for the suggestion for Karmine Corp. And I'm either gonna, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to stream tomorrow, but I am gonna be trying to stream most weekdays, looking at teams, trying to do what we can to see overall how well the teams are going to play and execute. But thank you so much, everybody, for showing up to the stream. And here's a last look at the notes for those who want to see. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you guys all at the next one. Have a good rest of your night, guys.